different. Most fighters win with moments, a punch, a kick, a flash. Khabib won with time, with pressure that never ended, with a style that didn't allow recovery. And because of that, something strange happened in every fight. The longer it went, the more hopeless it became for the other man. No matter how skilled
26 have tried, 26 have failed to solve Khabib Nurmagomedov in a mixed martial arts setting. In modern day MMA, it's an absolutely incredible accomplishment. And tonight, with status as the most dominant force in the game, Khabib Nurmagomedov is chasing the biggest win of his career.
How can you deny this man?
This is true. This is not trash talking. Hey guys, Irish only 6 million, Russian 150 million. I wanna fight both your chicken.
It's his best chance not to get picked.
Oh, beautiful trip. Oh, serious.
Right.
No one on earth does grounding.
I don't think about this guy. He have to come back, he have to defend his belt. I feel my time is coming.
Feared is something special. People are scared of this guy.
Lightweight champion of the world, Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov!
He didn't lose. He didn't get knocked out. He didn't get finished. He won. But what happened next shocked the whole world. Inside the cage, Khabib Nurmagomedov had just done what he always did. He controlled the fight. He broke his opponent's rhythm. He finished strong. Another win. Another perfect record. Now 29 wins, no losses, no doubt. The crowd was loud. The belt was his. The moment was supposed to be celebration, but something felt different. Khabib wasn't smiling like before. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't running around the cage. Instead, he stood still. Like the fight had taken something out of him the win could not give back. Then he spoke, and everything changed. He talked about his father, the man who trained him, the man who built him, the man who was no longer there. His voice cracked, his eyes dropped, and in that moment, the strongest fighter in the world didn't look like a champion anymore. He looked like a son. And then came the words nobody was ready for. I cannot continue without my father. Silence hit the arena. Confusion, shock, disbelief. Fans looked at each other, trying to understand what they just heard. A fighter at the absolute top, talking about leaving. He had everything. Fame, money, undefeated legacy, the world at his feet, but he was walking away. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. And in that moment, the story stopped being about winning fights. It became about something far deeper, because the greatest shock wasn't that he won, it was that after reaching the very top, he decided not to stay there. In fighting, there is an unspoken rule. If you are at the top, you don't leave. You stay. You defend. You keep going until the body breaks or the money runs out. That's how it usually ends. Most champions don't walk away when everything is perfect. They stay for one more fight, then another, and slowly, the sharp edge starts to fade. The crowd notices first, then the critics, then the fighter himself. But by then, it's often too late. In the world of MMA, legends are rarely remembered for when they were great. They are remembered for how long they stayed after greatness started slipping away. That's why what Khabib Nurmagomedov did felt impossible, because he wasn't declining. He wasn't losing speed. He wasn't being forced out. He was still perfect, still undefeated, still dominant, still the most feared grappler in the sport. And yet, he left. That goes against everything the fight game teaches. Fighters are taught to push one more time, to take one more payday, to chase one more highlight, to hold the belt as long as possible. Because in this world, greatness is measured by how long you can survive at the top. But Khabib broke that rule. He didn't wait for the fall. He didn't wait for the damage. He didn't wait for the regret. He stepped away while the world was still calling him unstoppable. And that's what made it so hard to understand, because no one leaves when they are still winning everything. No one walks away when they are still the problem nobody can solve. But he did, and that raised one question in every fan's mind. Why would someone give up a throne they could sit on forever? From the very beginning, Khabib Nurmagomedov didn't fight like everyone else. He didn't just train to win, he trained to make losing impossible. Every day started the same way. Early mornings, hard drills, endless wrestling rounds, no shortcuts, no easy days, just pressure over and over again. In his world, tired was normal. Pain was normal. Quitting was not. He wasn't built for highlight reels or quick knockouts. He was built for control, for breaking rhythm, for making strong fighters feel slow, confused, and stuck. Once he got hold of an opponent, something changed. It wasn't just strength, it was timing, weight, position, pressure that never stopped. Round after round, he stayed on top, not rushing, not wasting energy, just slowly taking everything away. At first, opponents tried to fight back. Then they tried to survive. Then they stopped trying at all. That's what made him different. Most fighters win with moments. A punch, a kick, a flash. Khabib won with time, with pressure that never ended, with a style that didn't allow recovery. And because of that, something strange happened in every fight. The longer it went, the more hopeless it became for the other man. No matter how skilled they were, no matter how confident they entered the cage, they always ended up in the same position. Stuck, tired, and waiting for it to end. There was no mystery anymore. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone trained for it. Everyone prepared for it. But still, nobody could stop it. Because he wasn't just trained to fight. He was built for a system where mistakes didn't exist. A system where pressure never stopped. A system where losing wasn't part of the design. And fight after fight, it worked exactly the same way. Perfect, relentless, unbroken. Being undefeated sounds like power, but for Khabib Nurmagomedov, it slowly became something heavier. At first, 29-0 looked perfect. Clean, untouched, a record every fighter dreams of. No losses, no doubts, no scars on paper. But perfection has a hidden cost, because once you reach the top and stay there, something changes. Every fight stops being just a fight. It becomes a risk to everything you've already built. One mistake, one slip, one moment of carelessness, and the whole story changes. That pressure never leaves. Every camp starts with the same thought. Don't be the one who breaks the streak. Every walk to the cage carries it. Every round adds more weight. Not just from the opponent, but from expectation. Fans don't just want you to win. They expect you to stay perfect. And that expectation grows louder after every victory. At 10-0, you are dangerous. At 20-0, you are respected. At 29-0, you are something else, a target. Because now, everyone isn't just trying to beat you. They are trying to be the one who ended it. That changes everything. Even in fights he controlled completely, the record was always there in the background. Not as pride, but as pressure. And pressure builds quietly. It doesn't scream. It doesn't show itself early. It sits in the back of every decision. Every exchange, every second on the feet. For most fighters, it eventually cracks them. But for Khabib, something different happened. He didn't break under it. He carried it, round after round, fight after fight, year after year. But carrying something that heavy for too long comes at a cost, because perfection doesn't just make you untouchable, it makes every next fight feel like the most dangerous one of your life. And at some point, even being undefeated starts to feel less like freedom and more like pressure you can never put down. Everything changed the day the man behind the system was gone. For Khabib Nurmagomedov, fighting was never just about opponents. It was about guidance, structure, direction, and that all came from one person, his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. He wasn't just a coach, he was the foundation. From childhood, he built Khabib step by step. Every drill had a purpose, every lesson had meaning. There was no confusion, no guessing, no freedom to drift, only discipline. And it worked. Khabib became the perfect result of that system. Calm, controlled, and unstoppable. But behind every performance was something deeper, a connection that went beyond sport. Then, suddenly, it ended. His father passed away. And in that moment, the structure that held everything together disappeared. The gym was still there, the training was still there, the fights were still there, but the voice that made it all make sense was gone. That kind of loss doesn't just hurt, it changes direction. Because when you've spent your entire life following one guide, one leader, one voice, losing it doesn't just create sadness, it creates silence where instructions used to be, and silence is heavy. After that, even victories felt different. The cage was still the same, but the meaning wasn't. The purpose wasn't as clear anymore, the path wasn't as simple. Before, every fight was part of a plan. Now, it was something else. Something harder to explain. Something harder to continue. This wasn't just about grief. It was about identity. Because when the person who shaped your entire life is gone, you don't just lose a coach. You lose the reason you were built the way you are. And for Khabib, that loss didn't weaken him. It changed what fighting meant forever. After the loss, nothing felt the same. Not the training, not the wins, not even the belt. For Khabib Nurmagomedov, everything had been built around one voice, his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. But now that voice was gone, and what remained was something heavier than pain, a promise. Before his final fight, Khabib had spoken to his mother, and what she asked him wasn't about titles or legacy. It was about life, about loss, about not losing another son the way she had already lost her husband. She told him she didn't want him to continue fighting without his father, and Khabib listened. That moment became something he could never ignore, because in his world, promises aren't suggestions, they are final. So even while the world still saw an undefeated champion, inside him something was already decided. The cage would not be forever, the record would not be the priority. Something else had taken its place. Family, faith, respect. It wasn't an emotional decision made in one night. It was a weight that grew with every training session after his father's passing. Every punch felt different. Every camp felt incomplete. The system was still there, but the soul behind it was gone. And slowly, the question stopped being, how long can I stay champion? It became, why am I still here? That is what made the promise so powerful, because it didn't come from pressure, it came from clarity. He was no longer fighting to prove anything to the world. He was no longer chasing records or silence or perfection. He was honoring something bigger than all of it. And once that promise was made, the path forward was already changing, not toward another fight, but toward an ending the world never saw coming. The final time Khabib Nurmagomedov walked into the cage, it didn't feel like a normal fight. It felt like the end of something bigger. Across from him stood Justin Gaethje, a dangerous striker known for violence and pressure. On paper, it was a title defense, another test, another night to stay undefeated. But for Khabib, nothing about this was normal anymore. His anchor was gone. His father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, Nurmagomedov was no longer there in the corner. The voice that guided every step of his career was missing. The system that shaped him had ended, and still he fought. From the opening bell, something felt different. Not in his skill. That was still perfect. Not in his pressure. That was still unstoppable. But in his eyes, there was something deeper there now. Something quieter. Gaithia came forward with power, trying to break rhythm, trying to force chaos. But Khabib didn't rush. He didn't panic. He didn't chase. He waited like he always did. Then he closed the distance. Slowly, calmly, inevitably. Once the fight hit the ground, the familiar pattern returned. Control, pressure, no escape. But this time, it felt heavier. Every position wasn't just about dominance. It felt like it carried memory, emotion, and loss. Gaethje fought hard. He tried to resist. He tried to stand. But the weight was too much. Round after round, the fight slipped further away. And yet, Khabib never changed expression. No celebration, no anger, no noise, just focus. Because this fight wasn't just about winning another title defense. It was about finishing something unfinished inside himself. When the submission came, it didn't feel like victory in the usual sense. It felt like closure. And in that moment, standing alone in the cage without the man who built him, Khabib had completed the last fight of his life. Not as a champion chasing more, but as a son honoring everything that came before. The moment the fight ended, the arena exploded. Another win, another defense, another night where Khabib Nurmagomedov did what no one else could do. Stay perfect. But inside the cage, there was no celebration, no jumping, no shouting, no running to the fence, just silence. He stood there for a second, breathing heavy, looking down at the ground like something inside him had finally settled. The belt was placed on him, but it didn't feel like the same kind of victory anymore, because this time something was missing. His father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, wasn't there in the corner. The man who had been part of every fight, every step, every decision was gone, and with that absence, everything felt different. The crowd was loud, but Khabib wasn't listening. Then he began to speak. His voice was calm at first, controlled, but underneath it, you could feel something breaking loose. He talked about his father, about the promise, about the journey that brought him here, and then the words came that nobody expected. I promised my mother this will be my last fight. For a moment, the entire arena froze. Confusion, shock, disbelief. A champion at 29-0, still at the top, still untouchable, still improving, and yet saying goodbye. It didn't make sense to the crowd. It didn't make sense to the sport. Fighters don't leave like this. Not here, not now, not when everything is still perfect. But for Khabib, it already made sense long before he said it out loud. This wasn't a decision made in that moment. It was something that had been building quietly for a long time, through loss, through pressure, through silence. And now, standing in the center of the cage, holding the belt, he made the choice that changed everything. He didn't just win the fight, he ended his story while still at the top and walked away before the world could take anything else from him. After that night, everyone waited for the return. They thought it was temporary. They thought he would miss it. They thought he would come back for one more fight. But Khabib Nurmagomedov never did, because for him, the decision was already complete. Most fighters leave the door slightly open. They say things like maybe later or we'll see, but Khabib closed it fully. No confusion, no hesitation, no back and forth, and that's what made it so hard for people to understand. He was still at the top, still undefeated, still improving, still the most dominant force in the sport. There was no decline to explain it, no loss to justify it, nothing forced him out. So why leave? The answer was never about fighting ability, it was about meaning. After the death of his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, something inside him shifted permanently. Fighting was no longer just competition, it became memory, it became weight, it became something tied to emotion instead of ambition. And then came the promise to his mother. That promise became stronger than any title, stronger than any record, stronger than the entire idea of being champion. Because once that promise was made, everything else became secondary. Money didn't matter anymore, legacy didn't matter anymore, even perfection didn't matter anymore. He had already reached the highest point possible in his sport. There was nothing left to chase that could replace what he had lost. And that's the part people struggle to accept. Not that he could have stayed, but that he didn't need to. Because most fighters keep going to find meaning. Khabib left because he already found it. So while the world kept asking when he would return, the answer was simple and final. He wasn't gone because he was forced out. He was gone because for the first time in his life, he had nothing left to prove inside the cage. What Khabib did is rare in fighting history. Not because he won, not because he was undefeated, but because of when he left. Most fighters don't get that choice. They don't walk away at the top. They don't leave while they are still feared, still improving, still dominant. The sport usually takes something first: speed, power, confidence, health, and only then does a fighter step away. But Khabib Nurmagomedov didn't wait for that moment. He left before the decline ever started. That is what makes it almost impossible to understand. In combat sports, the system is built to pull fighters deeper, more money, bigger fights, more fame. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. Every win convinces you there is still more to do. Every belt convinces you to defend it again, and the world always encourages one more. But Khabib broke that cycle completely. He was still undefeated, still champion, still at the peak of his ability. Nothing was taken from him. He gave it up voluntarily, and that almost never happens because greatness usually becomes addictive. The feeling of winning, the attention, the legacy, it pulls most fighters back in, even when they know they should stop. But for Khabib, something else was stronger. The loss of his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, changed the meaning of everything, and the promise he made to his mother sealed it. That combination created something rare in sports: clarity. He didn't leave because he was tired of winning. He left because he understood that staying would take more than it would give. And that is why his story stands apart. Because in a world where most legends fight too long, he was one of the very few who left exactly at the right time, at the top. Unbroken, unchanged. People think fighting happens inside the cage, but for Khabib Nurmagomedov, the hardest fight came after the cage was empty. There were no punches, no crowd, no opponent, just silence. For years, his life had one clear path: train, fight, win, repeat. Every day had meaning because every day was building toward the next battle. Even pain made sense because it was part of becoming better. But when he left, that structure disappeared. No more camps, no more opponents, no more countdown to fight night. And that's when the real challenge began. Because walking away sounds easy from the outside, but when your entire life is built around discipline, pressure, and purpose, stopping doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like emptiness. The cage gave him direction. It gave him focus. It gave him identity. Outside of it, everything becomes slower, quieter, less certain. But Khabib didn't walk away confused. He walked away clear because his decision wasn't made in one moment. It was built over time, through loss, through promise, through understanding what mattered more than fighting. His father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, had built him for competition, but life after his father taught him something deeper. That strength is not only measured by how long you fight, but also by when you stop. Most fighters are remembered for how they fall, for how long they stay after their peak, but Khabib changed that idea completely. He left before the fall, and that's what makes his story different, because in the end, his greatest victory was not a takedown, not a submission, not a title defense. It was a decision to walk away at the top, to stay undefeated forever, and to win a fight that no opponent could ever give him, the fight to let go.
All onto the green. Fluid onto the green. Oh, it's going to break race.
He does indeed!
10 under par. Welcome to the big time, Rory McIlroy.
Oh, no way! McIlroy with 3 in a row and the third the most unlikely.
This dazzling 21-year-old Rory McIlroy.
He had everything: the perfect swing, the perfect power, the perfect career. Rory McIlroy was supposed to win it all, again and again, but every time he got close, something changed. His hands got tight, his mind went quiet, and the shot just didn't happen. One moment in 2011 started it all. One missed chance at Augusta that never really left him, and now, years later, it still shows up when everything is on the line. So the question is simple: is Rory losing because of golf or because of his own mind? Before the mistakes, before the pressure, before the doubt. There was something different about Rory McIlroy. When he hit a golf ball, it didn't look like effort. It looked natural, almost easy. The ball would fly high, long, straight, like it already knew where it was going. People started saying it early. This guy is special. This guy is next. This guy might be the one. Because Rory didn't just play golf well, he looked like he was built for it. While others worked hard to control their swing, Rory already had power most players only dream about. He could change a hole in one shot. He could turn a safe round into a winning one in minutes. And when he started winning, it felt inevitable. He didn't slowly climb the rankings. He arrived, big tournaments, big pressure, same result. And that's when the talk began. Not just that he was good, but that he was perfect. A complete player. Power, control, touch, confidence. The kind of player golf doesn't see often. People even started comparing him to legends like Tiger Woods. But there was something deeper forming under all that praise. Because when you are called perfect, anything less starts to feel like failure. He didn't slowly climb the rankings. He arrived, big tournaments, big pressure, same result. And in golf, perfection is dangerous. One bad round doesn't feel like a mistake, it feels like a question. One missed putt doesn't feel small, it feels like pressure growing louder. Rory wasn't just playing against the course anymore, he was playing against expectation. And the higher he climbed, the heavier it became. Because when the world believes you are perfect, they stop watching your wins and start watching for the moment you prove them wrong. It was supposed to be his moment. The world had already started to believe it. The talent was real. The wins were coming. The future looked wide open. And then came April 2011, the Masters tournament, a place where golf doesn't just test your swing, it tests your mind. On Sunday, Rory McIlroy walked onto the course with a 4-shot lead. 4 shots. That usually means control, comfort, almost victory. Everything looked calm at first. His swing was smooth, his face was focused. Nothing looked wrong, but Augusta has a way of changing things without warning. It started small. A shot a little left, a recovery that wasn't clean, a feeling that something didn't sit right. Then came the 10th hole. One moment, one swing, and everything broke. A drive gone wild, a mistake under pressure, a triple bogey that no one saw coming, and just like that, the lead was gone. Not slowly, not carefully, gone. You could see it in Rory's face after that hole. Not anger, not panic, something worse. Confusion. Because for the first time in his career, he couldn't fix it. The game that once felt easy suddenly felt heavy. Every shot started to matter too much. Every step felt louder. Every thought became a question. By the time he reached the final holes, the tournament didn't feel like his anymore. It felt like it was slipping away in real time. He finished with an 80, and the world didn't just see a bad round, they saw something else, a crack, not in his swing, but in his belief. Before Augusta, he was the next big thing. After Augusta, something changed, not outside, inside. And that moment didn't disappear. It stayed. Most people thought Augusta 2011 would slow him down. But it did the opposite. It woke something inside Rory McIlroy, because after that collapse, he didn't hide, he didn't fade, he didn't doubt forever. He came back stronger, much stronger. A few months later, he stepped onto the biggest stage again at the US Open, and this time, there was no fear. From the very first round, it felt different. Every shot had purpose, every swing had control, and suddenly, the same player who collapsed at Augusta was dominating the field. He didn't just win, he destroyed the competition. Then came the PGA Championship, another win, another statement, another reminder that Augusta was not the end of his story. By now, the world wasn't questioning his talent anymore. They were predicting history. He became world number one. He was winning majors. He was collecting trophies like it was only a matter of time. And that's where something strange happened. The success didn't erase Augusta. It made it louder, because now the expectations were no longer, he might be great. They became, he has to be great. Every tournament wasn't just a chance to win. It was a chance to confirm what people already believed. That pressure doesn't feel heavy at first. It builds slowly, win by win. Expectation by expectation, headline by headline. And even when Rory was winning, something was shifting. He started playing not just to win, but to prove. To prove Augusta didn't matter. To prove he was still the best. To prove the collapse was behind him. But pressure doesn't disappear when you outrun it. It waits. And the more he won, the more it waited for the moment he didn't. At first, it looked like normal golf. Good days, bad days, wins, losses. That's how the sport works. But for Rory McIlroy, something different started to appear. A pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. When Rory was chasing, everything felt free. He played fast. He played bold. He played like nothing could touch him. But when he was leading, something changed. Not in his swing, in his mind. His movements became a little tighter. His decisions became a little safer. His rhythm wasn't as natural. It wasn't obvious at first, but over time, it showed up in the biggest moments. The Open Championship, a chance to win. He pushed hard, but came up short. The Masters Tournament, a perfect position again, but Sunday slipped away. The US Open, one shot away, and then gone in the final stretch. Different courses, different years, same feeling. So people started asking the same question again. Why does this keep happening? Because technically, nothing was wrong. His swing was still one of the best in the world. His power still unmatched. His skill still elite. But golf at this level isn't just about skill, it's about what happens when everything slows down, when the crowd gets quiet, when the whole feels smaller, when the result suddenly matters too much. That's when Rory's pattern shows up. Not always, not every time, but enough times to matter. And the strangest part, the closer he gets to winning, the more careful he becomes. As if the fear of losing the moment is stronger than the desire to win it. And in golf, hesitation is enough. Just a fraction of a second, just one thought too many, and the moment is gone. At this point, the problem was no longer visible on the outside, because on paper, Rory McIlroy was still one of the best players in the world. He still hit the ball farther than almost anyone. He still won tournaments. He still reached world number one again. But something had changed in the moments that mattered most. The real battle wasn't happening on the course anymore. It was happening before the shot, right before impact. That small space of time where everything slows down. That's where the war began. When Rory is chasing a score, there is freedom, no hesitation, no fear, just instinct. But when he is leading, the mind starts to speak. Don't miss. Don't mess this up. Just be safe. And that is where great players become different, because safety is not how you win. Over time, that voice grew louder. Not because he got worse, but because the stakes got heavier. Every major Sunday carries memory. Every leaderboard brings pressure. Every shot becomes connected to everything that came before it. Especially after the Masters tournament, that moment never left. It became a shadow, not something he sees, but something he feels. And when the mind remembers failure, it tries to protect you from it. That's the trap. Protection becomes hesitation. Hesitation becomes tightness. Tightness becomes missed opportunities. And from the outside, it looks like inconsistency. But inside, it feels like control slipping away. That is the psychological war Rory fights. Not against opponents like Bryson DeChambeau or anyone else, but against the version of himself that remembers everything too clearly. Because at this level, talent is not rare. What's rare is silence in the mind. And Rory's mind never really stays silent when everything is on the line. There are golf courses, and then there is Augusta. For most players, the Masters tournament is just another major, a dream, a goal. But for Rory McIlroy, it became something else. It became the place where everything changed. It started in 2011. A 4-shot lead, a Sunday collapse, a moment that should have been a coronation but turned into confusion, silence, and loss. That memory didn't stay in the past, it followed him, because Augusta doesn't let you forget. Every year he comes back, the course looks the same. The trees, the fairways, the green jacket waiting at the end. But for Rory, it doesn't feel the same. It feels heavier. Not because the course is harder, but because the memory is louder. Every time he steps onto those back 9 holes on Sunday, the mind remembers what happened before. Not in detail, in feeling. The feeling of having it and losing it. That's what makes Augusta different from every other tournament. It doesn't just test your skill, it tests your history. Even when Rory plays well there, when he leads, when he contends, when he gets close, it always feels like something is watching, not the crowd, not the cameras, the past. That's why the Masters became more than a tournament for him. It became unfinished business. Every missed chance added weight, every close call added pressure, every return added expectation, and the hardest part, he never stopped being good enough to win it. That's what makes it worse, because failure would be easier to accept if the opportunity was gone, but it never is. So every April, the same question returns. Different year, same place, same story, waiting to be rewritten. And until it is, Augusta never really lets him go. At this point, the story of Rory McIlroy is no longer just about golf, it's about something deeper. A question that keeps coming back every season. Can the mind be fixed when it has already learned fear? Because on the outside, nothing is broken. His swing is still one of the best in the world. His distance still dominates courses. His record still places him among the greatest of his generation. He wins tournaments. He reaches world number one. He stays at the top. But the moments that define legacies still feel different. Not always, not every time, but enough times to create doubt. And in sport, doubt spreads quietly. It doesn't shout. It doesn't crash in all at once. It shows up in small moments. A slightly safer shot, a slightly longer pause, a thought that wasn't there before. That's the real fight now. Not against opponents like Bryson DeChambeau or anyone else on the leaderboard, but against the memory of everything that has already happened. The collapse at the Masters tournament, the missed chances at majors, the near victories that slipped away in the final stretch. All of it sits somewhere in the background, not as failure, but as experience. And experience is powerful because it teaches you what can go wrong. So the question becomes simple, but impossible to answer. Is this something Rory can overcome with time, with more wins, with more experience in pressure moments? Or is this just how elite sport works at the highest level, where talent brings you to the edge, but the mind decides if you cross it? Because maybe the truth is this: at Rory's level, everyone can win. Everyone can hit the shots. Everyone can lead. But not everyone can stay free when it matters most. And that is the final question. Not about swing, not about skill, but about the one thing no coach can fully control: the mind that won't let him win.
He called himself a billionaire. He flashed private jets, Rolls Royces, and stacks of cash that made the whole world believe it. But here's what nobody told you. The man who built an empire on the idea of being untouchable was quietly drowning in debt. This is the story of the greatest financial illusion in sports history. Before we talk about what was real, let's talk about what he wanted you to see. The private jets. Always the private jets. Floyd didn't just fly. He made sure the world knew exactly how he flew. Instagram posts from the tarmac, stacks of cash fanned out across leather seats, champagne at 40,000 feet, not because he was thirsty, but because the camera was watching. The cars came next. Not one Rolls Royce, not two, a collection, a rotating fleet of machines that cost more than most people's homes, parked outside hotels, pulled up to nightclubs, photographed from every angle. Each one a carefully placed prop in the most expensive one-man show boxing had ever seen. Then there was the cash. Floyd Mayweather had a relationship with physical money that no other athlete in history could match. He carried it in bags. He counted it on camera. He slept next to it. He named himself Money and then spent every waking hour making sure you never forgot it. The championship belts weren't just trophies either. They were costume pieces, worn to restaurants, brought to nightclubs, draped over his shoulders at press conferences like a king reminding his court exactly who was in charge. And the world bought every single second of it, because that was the genius of Floyd Mayweather before we even get to the truth. He understood something most athletes never figure out. Perception is more powerful than reality. If people believe you are worth $1 billion, you don't need to actually have $1 billion. You just need to make sure they never stop looking at the jets. But here's the question. Nobody asked back then who was actually paying for all of it. At some point between the championships and the private jets, Floyd Mayweather stopped calling himself rich. That word wasn't big enough anymore. Instead, he picked a new one: billionaire. He said it casually, confidently, the way someone mentions the weather. In interviews, on social media, at press conferences, Floyd Mayweather declared himself a billionaire so many times, and with such conviction that eventually, people just started believing it. But let's slow down, because the numbers tell a very different story. In 2013, Forbes estimated Floyd's earnings at around $73 million for that year alone, making him the highest paid athlete on the planet. Not just in boxing, in all of sports. That number was real, that number was verified, and by every measure, it was extraordinary. But extraordinary is not $1 billion. By 2015, after the Pacquiao fight, the biggest payday in boxing history, Forbes reported Floyd had earned somewhere between $300 and $400 million across his entire career at that point. Impressive, absolutely. Billion-dollar territory, not even close. Yet Floyd never corrected anyone, never clarified, never once sat in front of a camera and said, "Here is my actual net worth." Instead, he leaned into the myth, fed it, grew it, and watched the world repeat it back to him like gospel. Financial analysts who studied his career openly questioned the billionaire claim. Celebrity net worth platforms, which are rarely conservative, placed his real net worth somewhere between $400 and $560 million at his absolute peak. That is generational wealth, life-changing money, more than most humans will ever comprehend. But it is not a billion. So why did he keep saying it? Because Floyd Mayweather understood something Wall Street has known for centuries. If you can control what people believe about your wealth, you can use that belief to generate more wealth. The billionaire claim wasn't a mistake. It wasn't ego running wild. It was a strategy. And the deeper you look at it, the more calculated it becomes. Here is what most people picture when they hear Floyd Mayweather made $300 million from one fight. A check, his name on it, deposited, done. That is not how boxing works, and understanding what actually happens to that money is the key to understanding everything about Floyd's financial story. Start with the Pacquiao fight. Floyd's reported purse was $180 million. That sounds untouchable. But watch what happens next. First come the federal taxes. At Floyd's income level, the government takes roughly 37 cents from every dollar. Immediately, that $180 million shrinks to somewhere around $113 million. Then comes management. Fighters typically pay between 10 and 33% to managers and advisors, each one taking their cut from the top line number before anything else is calculated. Then come the trainers, the sparring partners, the nutritionists, the medical staff. A world championship camp at Floyd's level costs millions of dollars to run for every single fight. Then come the sanctioning fees, the WBC, the WBA, the IBF. These organizations charge fighters a direct percentage of their purse just to compete for their titles. It sounds absurd, but it is completely real. Then come the promotion costs, the arena, the marketing, the press tours. When Floyd promoted his own fights under Mayweather Promotions, these costs came directly out of his pocket. Add everything together. That $180 million payday realistically landed somewhere between $80 and $100 million after everything was settled. Still extraordinary money. But now ask yourself one question. If the biggest fight in boxing history only netted him around $80 million, how many of those fights does it take to reach $1 billion? The answer is more than Floyd ever had. And that gap between the headline number and the real number is exactly where the illusion began. Here is the thing about Floyd Mayweather's spending that nobody wants to admit. It was real. Every dollar that left his hands was genuine. The jewelry wasn't fake. The jets weren't rented props. The club nights weren't exaggerated. Floyd Mayweather spent money at a scale that made other rich people uncomfortable. But spending money and having money are two completely different things. Let's start with the nightclubs. Floyd didn't just attend parties, he bought them. Single nights at Las Vegas clubs where the bill hit $400,000. Not a monthly expense, a single night. He would post the receipts on social media the next morning like a report card, proof that the image was still intact, proof that Money Mayweather wasn't just a nickname. Then there were the jets. Floyd rarely flew commercial. Private aviation at his level costs anywhere between $10,000 and $150,000 per flight, depending on the aircraft and destination. Floyd was in the air constantly. Fight weeks, vacations, casino trips, international appearances. The jet wasn't a luxury for Floyd. It was an operating cost of being Floyd Mayweather. The jewelry collection alone was estimated at over $15 million at its peak. Watches that cost more than houses. Chains that cost more than cars. Pieces commissioned specifically to be photographed and posted. Because every image of Floyd dripping in diamonds was another deposit into the most valuable thing he owned, his image. But here is where the story gets dark. Financial experts who studied celebrity spending patterns estimate Floyd was burning through money faster than even his enormous earnings could sustain. Between fights, sometimes gaps of 12 to 18 months, the spending never stopped. The jets kept flying. The clubs kept opening tabs. The jewelry kept coming. The income was occasional. The lifestyle was permanent. And that combination, extraordinary earnings paired with extraordinary spending and zero patience in between, is not wealth building. It is wealth destruction dressed up in diamonds. Floyd Mayweather didn't just spend money. He weaponized spending to maintain an illusion that was quietly costing him everything. There is a moment in every great financial illusion where reality stops being patient. For Floyd Mayweather, that moment came with a letter, not from a promoter, not from a rival, from the Internal Revenue Service. While the world was watching Floyd count cash, on Instagram, the IRS was quietly building a very different picture, one that didn't involve private jets or championship belts, one that involved unpaid taxes, mounting penalties, and a financial situation that was far more complicated than anyone on the outside could see. Reports surfaced that Floyd owed the IRS tens of millions of dollars across multiple years. Not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, tens of millions. The kind of number that makes accountants lose sleep and lawyers charge extra. But how does someone earning hundreds of millions of dollars end up behind on their taxes? The answer is simpler than you think. When money comes in massive, irregular bursts, one giant payday every 12 to 18 months, and spending happens every single day, the math starts breaking down fast. The lifestyle doesn't pause between fights, but the income does. Floyd reportedly had to negotiate payment plans with the IRS on multiple occasions. A man who publicly claimed billionaire status was quietly arranging installment agreements with the federal government just to stay compliant. Think about that for a moment. A billionaire doesn't negotiate payment plans. A billionaire writes a check and moves on. The very existence of those negotiations tells you everything about the distance between Floyd's public image and his private reality. The IRS problem wasn't just a financial issue. It was a crack in the illusion. A small one, barely visible from the outside, but cracks have a way of spreading. In 2007, Floyd Mayweather did something that was genuinely bold. He fired Bob Arum, one of the most powerful promoters in boxing history, a man who had controlled some of the biggest names in the sport for decades. Floyd looked at everything Arum represented. The contracts, the control, the percentage taken from every single payday, and walked away. Then he built his own promotion company, Mayweather Promotions. His name on the door, his rules, his money. On the surface, it looked like the smartest move of his career. Underneath it was quietly becoming one of his most expensive decisions. Here is the problem with running a promotion company that most people never consider. The risk doesn't disappear when you own the company. It just transfers. Instead of a promoter absorbing the losses when an event underperforms, Floyd absorbed them himself, and some of those events underperformed badly. Mayweather Promotions put on fights that failed to draw. Fighters signed to the company never reached their commercial potential. Events were staged in venues too large for the actual audience. Marketing budgets were spent on cards that couldn't justify the investment. The money flowing out of Mayweather Promotions was real and consistent. The money flowing back in was unpredictable and often disappointing. Beyond the events, there were fighter contracts to honor, staff salaries to pay, legal fees to manage. The operational cost of running a legitimate promotion company is enormous even before a single punch is thrown. Floyd presented Mayweather Promotions to the world as an empire. But behind the logo and the press conferences, it was bleeding money quietly and consistently. Owning yourself in boxing sounds like freedom. Sometimes it just means you're paying for your own losses. In 2017, Floyd Mayweather did something that confused everyone. He came out of retirement to fight an MMA fighter, not a boxer, not a former champion, not an undefeated contender hungry for his title, a mixed martial arts fighter who had never competed professionally in a boxing ring a single day in his life. The world laughed at first. Then they bought 4.3 million pay-per-view buys and stopped laughing. But here is the question that nobody asked loud enough at the time. Why did Floyd really do it? The official story was simple. McGregor was the biggest star in combat sports. The matchup was unprecedented. The money would be historic. Floyd saw an opportunity and took it. That explanation sounds clean, logical, very on brand for a man who always claimed business came first. But look closer at the timeline. By 2017, Floyd had been retired for 2 years. The IRS issues were still unresolved. Mayweather Promotions was struggling quietly behind the scenes. The spending had never slowed down. And the Pacquiao fight money, as enormous as it was, had been moving out of his accounts faster than anyone realized. Suddenly, a fight worth a reported $300 million in total revenue doesn't just sound like an opportunity. It sounds like a lifeline. Floyd dominated McGregor comfortably, stopped him in the 10th round, collected his payday, and called it the greatest business decision of his life. And maybe it was. But the most revealing part of that fight wasn't what happened inside the ring. It was the fact that a man who retired undefeated and untouchable at 49-0 needed one more payday. Genius and desperation can look identical from the outside. Only the bank statement knows the difference. There is one habit that has quietly destroyed more athletic fortunes than bad investments, failed businesses, and tax problems combined: gambling. And Floyd Mayweather didn't just gamble. He made it part of his personality. Million-dollar bets posted on social media. Sports picks shared publicly with the confidence of a man who believed he could read outcomes the way he read opponents. Winning tickets photographed and uploaded for the world to celebrate with him. It looked like another flex, another layer of the Money Mayweather brand. But what Floyd never posted were the losses. And at the level Floyd was gambling, the losses were enormous. Reports surfaced over the years of single bets reaching $400,000. Weekend gambling trips to casinos where the losses ran into the millions. Not millions across a career, millions across a weekend. Here is what most people fundamentally misunderstand about high-level gambling. It is not investing. It is not a skill that compounds over time like boxing technique or business strategy. The house edge is permanent. The variance is brutal. And when you are betting at the level Floyd operated at, even a winning record can still mean catastrophic net losses over time. Floyd reportedly won some famous bets publicly. Those stories spread everywhere, but the mathematics of gambling at that scale work against even the luckiest bettor in the long run. Financial advisors who spoke about athlete gambling habits without naming Floyd specifically described a pattern that matched his lifestyle perfectly: big public wins, quiet, devastating losses, and a compulsion to keep going because stopping felt like admitting weakness. For a man who never lost inside the ring, admitting weakness was never an option. And that pride, the same pride that made him undefeated, may have cost him more money than any opponent ever could. Here is where the entire story shifts. Because before you walk away thinking Floyd Mayweather was simply reckless, simply irresponsible, simply a man who got lucky and burned through it carelessly, you need to consider a different possibility. What if it was all intentional? Not the debt, not the tax problems, not the gambling losses, but the image, the billionaire claim, the jets, the cash, the diamonds. What if every single carefully photographed moment of excess was not ego running wild, but a calculated business decision? Think about how Floyd's career actually worked. Every fight Floyd Mayweather ever had was built on anticipation, on desire, on a public that was so convinced they were watching the richest, most untouchable man in sports that they couldn't look away. Promoters didn't sell Floyd's fights on skill alone. They sold them on the mythology of Floyd Mayweather. And mythology requires maintenance. The $400,000 club night wasn't just a party. It was a press release. The jewelry wasn't just vanity, it was marketing. The billionaire claim wasn't just exaggeration. It was positioning, placing Floyd in a category so exclusive that every fight became an event worth paying for. Because here is the cold financial reality of boxing. Fighters who seem rich attract bigger fights. Bigger fights attract bigger purses. Bigger purses attract more spending. More spending maintains the image, and the image attracts the next big fight. It is a cycle, expensive, dangerous, unsustainable long-term, but undeniably effective while it lasted. Floyd Mayweather may not have been a billionaire, but he understood something genuine billionaires spend millions learning. Perception is the most valuable currency in the world, and for 2 decades nobody spent it better than him. So after everything, after the jets and the jewelry, after the IRS letters and the gambling losses, after the promotion company bleeding quietly in the background, after 2 decades of billionaire claims and carefully constructed illusion, what is Floyd Mayweather actually worth today? The honest answer is nobody knows exactly. And that uncertainty itself tells you something important. Genuine billionaires have paper trails, verified assets, investment portfolios that analysts can examine with confidence. When people ask what Elon Musk is worth, the numbers are traceable, documented, real. When people ask what Floyd Mayweather is worth, the answers vary wildly. Some platforms estimate his current net worth around $450 million. Others place it closer to $300 million. Conservative financial analysts who studied his spending patterns suggest the real number could be significantly lower than either figure. What we know with certainty is this: Floyd earned over $1 billion in gross revenue across his career. That number is real. But earning $1 billion and keeping $1 billion are two completely different achievements. The taxes took hundreds of millions. The spending took hundreds of millions more. The gambling, the promotion losses, the daily cost of maintaining an image the entire world was watching. All of it added up. But here is the final thought worth sitting with. Floyd Mayweather came from a one-bedroom apartment with no heat, no lights, and a father in prison. Whatever his real number is today, it represents something genuinely extraordinary. A man who built an empire from absolutely nothing, who mastered perception so completely that the whole world argued about his billions. Floyd Mayweather may not be a billionaire, but he made the entire world believe he was. And in his world, that was always enough. December 27, 2009, Isleworth, Orlando, Florida. A quiet street, a fire hydrant, a black Cadillac Escalade with the airbags deployed and the driver's window missing, and a set of golf clubs scattered across the neighbor's lawn. And the world stops. Not stops in the way it stops for a bad tournament, or a missed cut, or an athlete having a difficult year. Stops in the way it stops when something that was never supposed to be fragile reveals in one single unguarded moment that it was fragile the entire time. That, underneath the perfection and the control and the billion-dollar machinery of the most carefully managed image in the history of professional sports, underneath all of it was a man, just a man, $3 billion. That is the number they attach to him, not to his winnings. To him, to the idea of him, to the thing he represented to Nike and EA Sports and Gillette and every corporation that looked at Tiger Woods and saw something they had never seen before and understood immediately that they were looking at something that would not come again. 15 major championships, a swing that grown men spent careers trying to reverse engineer. A mental game so precise, so suffocatingly dominant, that opponents would arrive at tournaments having already decided what second place looked like. He didn't compete, he administered outcomes. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a golf gallery when Tiger Woods stands over a putt that matters, not the polite quiet of spectators following the rules. Something older than that, something involuntary. 40,000 people holding their breath simultaneously. Because somewhere in the collective nervous system of the crowd, the understanding has landed that they are watching something that will not be repeated. That was Tiger Woods at his peak. And then 45 seconds on a quiet Florida night dismantled all of it. Not a loss, not a slump, not the ordinary erosion of a career winding toward its natural end. A collapse. The question was never how far he fell. The question, the one nobody could answer, was how any of it was even possible in the first place. To understand what happened in November 2009, you have to first understand what Tiger Woods actually was, not what the commercials sold you, not the Nike swoosh and the fist pump and the highlight reel. The actual thing, the real competitive organism that existed inside those ropes on a Sunday afternoon with a tournament on the line. He was born in December 1975 in Cypress, California. His father, Earl, was a former Green Beret who had played golf late in life and become quietly obsessed with it. His mother, Coltita, carried a discipline and a toughness that her son would inherit so completely it would eventually become the thing people feared most about him. Earl Woods put a golf club in his son's hands before he could walk properly. That is not a metaphor. That is a documented fact. By the time Tiger was 3 years old, he was on television. By 8, he was beating grown men at local courses. By 15, he was the youngest player in U.S. junior amateur history to win the title. He then won it again and again. 3 consecutive U.S. junior amateur titles. 3 consecutive U.S. amateur titles. Before he had turned professional. Before he had earned a single dollar from the sport. But statistics do not capture what Tiger Woods was. Statistics describe outcomes. They do not describe the thing that produced them. They do not describe the quality of focus that his opponents talked about in interviews using words they couldn't quite organize. Words like suffocating and inevitable, and like playing against something that isn't human. Phil Mickelson talked about it. Ernie Els talked about it. Men who had won major championships of their own, men who understood pressure and competition at the highest level, would stand on a first tee alongside Tiger Woods and feel something shift inside them. Not nerves, something deeper than nerves. The recognition that the contest had already been decided. That was the weapon, not the swing, though the swing was extraordinary. Not the putting, though the putting was surgical. The weapon was the certainty he produced in everyone around him. Tiger Woods didn't just beat opponents. He made them beat themselves. The thing about cracks is that they don't announce themselves. They don't arrive with a press conference or a headline or a moment you can point to afterward and say, "There, that was it. That was where it started." They move quietly underneath the surface, in the places nobody is looking because everybody is too busy watching the wins accumulate and the records fall and the legend compound on itself with every passing season. From the outside, in the mid-2000s, Tiger Woods still looked exactly like Tiger Woods. The wins were still coming. The fist pumps were still landing on the front pages. The gap between him and the rest of the world's best golfers was still the most reliable fact in professional sports. But the outside is a constructed thing, managed, edited, delivered to the public in the form that the people managing it decide the public should receive. The marriage to Elin Nordegren in 2004 had produced the image the machinery needed, the family, the domesticity, the proof that behind the competitive animal was a man, grounded, settled, human in the ways that made sponsors comfortable and audiences loyal. What the image did not include was what the marriage was actually containing. The travel was relentless, 40 weeks a year on the road. The pressure, not the pressure of competition, which Tiger had always metabolized better than anyone alive, but the pressure of being the thing everyone needed him to be at all times, without interruption, had been building for years without a release valve. Fame at that level is not glamorous. It is a cage with a very expensive lock, and Tiger Woods, for all his control inside the ropes, had been quietly, systematically making decisions outside them that existed in direct opposition to everything the image required. Nobody knew yet. That is the part that is almost impossible to process in retrospect. The whole architecture of it, the scope, the duration, the sheer number of people who would eventually come forward, and nobody knew. The cracks were there. They had been there for years. The world just hadn't looked in the right places yet. November 27th, 2009, Thanksgiving night. At approximately 2:25 in the morning, neighbors on Deacon Circle in the Isleworth gated community outside Orlando heard something. Not a crash exactly. Not the dramatic cinematic sound effect of metal on concrete. Something smaller than that. Something almost ordinary. A black Cadillac Escalade had rolled out of a driveway and struck a fire hydrant. Then a tree. The airbags had not deployed. The driver's window was shattered. The driver was unconscious behind the wheel with lacerations on his upper and lower lip. His wife was standing outside holding a golf club. The first responders who arrived did not immediately understand what they were looking at. It took a moment, because the man slumped in that seat, the man with the cut lip and the wrecked car on a quiet street at 2:25 in the morning, was the most famous athlete on the planet. The initial statement from Tiger's team was released within hours. A car accident, minor injuries, a private matter. The language was careful and minimal and designed to close the story before it had a chance to open. It did not close. Because within 48 hours, the first name surfaced. A woman, a voicemail, a text message exchange that had been preserved and was now moving through the media ecosystem with the particular velocity that only the collision of fame and scandal can produce. Then a second name, then a third. What followed over the next 72 hours was not a news cycle. News cycles have a rhythm. They peak and they recede, and they make room for the next thing. What followed was something different. Something without a clear precedent in the modern sports media era. Name after name after name emerging from a silence that had held, somehow, for years. Each one carrying its own timeline, its own documentation, its own specific detail that made denial not just difficult, but structurally impossible. The machinery that had spent 15 years constructing the image of Tiger Woods could not move fast enough. Nobody could. Nike went quiet. EA Sports went quiet. Gillette went quiet. Accenture, the consulting firm that had built an entire global campaign around the phrase, "Go on, be a tiger," began the process of quietly, methodically, removing his face from every surface it occupied. $3 billion. Gone. Not immediately, not all at once. But the process had begun, and everyone who understood how these things worked knew that the process, once started, does not reverse. On December 2nd, Tiger Woods posted a statement on his website. He used the word transgressions. He asked for privacy. He said the situation was my fault, and that he was not without faults, and I am far short of perfect. The statement ran to several hundred words. It answered nothing. Because the questions by that point were not the kind that statements answer. The questions were the kind that live in the space between what a person projects and what a person actually is. The questions were about the distance, the staggering, almost incomprehensible distance between the image and the reality. On February 19th, 2010, Tiger Woods stood in front of a small invited audience at the TPC Sawgrass Clubhouse in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, and delivered a prepared apology that was broadcast live on every major network. He stood at a podium. He wore a dark suit. He did not take questions. For 13 minutes and 33 seconds, the most controlled athlete who had ever lived attempted to explain in public how completely he had lost control. He apologized to his wife, to his children, to his mother, who was sitting in the front row, to his business partners, to the game of golf, to the fans who had trusted him. He said he had felt entitled, that the fame and the money and the success had produced in him a belief that the rules that applied to everyone else did not apply to him. And watching it, even now, years removed from the moment, there is something almost unbearable about those 13 minutes, not because of the scandal, not because of the names or the timeline or the architecture of the deception, because of the control. Even in the apology, the control is visible, the measured cadence, the careful word choices, the absence of anything spontaneous or unscripted or genuinely raw. A man who had spent his entire life managing outcomes, attempting to manage the one outcome that had already escaped him entirely. This wasn't a scandal. It was a collapse. The sponsors didn't all leave at once. That would have been cleaner, more decisive. What actually happened was slower, and in some ways worse. A gradual public unwinding, where each departure became its own news cycle, its own fresh confirmation that the machinery was disassembling itself piece by piece with no indication of where the floor was. Accenture, Gatorade, Tag Heuer, a T&T gone. Nike stayed, but Nike staying almost made the silence from everyone else louder. He returned to golf in April 2010 at the Masters. The galleries were enormous, not because they expected him to win, but because humans are drawn instinctively toward wreckage. He finished fourth. It was, by any objective measure, a remarkable performance for a man who had spent 4 months at the center of a global media catastrophe. It was also the last time for a very long time that Tiger Woods would look like Tiger Woods. The wins became infrequent, then rare, then absent entirely. And then the body began. The left knee, the Achilles, the back, each injury arriving before the previous one had fully resolved. Each surgery requiring another and another in a cascade that sports medicine professionals would later describe in language that made it difficult to understand how he was still walking, let alone competing. 4 back surgeries. A spinal fusion in 2017 that his own team quietly acknowledged might have ended everything. First, he lost his image. Then he lost his body, and for a long stretch of years that felt permanent to everyone watching, including, by his own admission, Tiger Woods himself. That appeared to be the end of the story. There is a version of this story that jumps straight to 2019. That takes everything that happened in the years between the collapse and the comeback, and compresses it into a 30-second montage of struggle and resilience and redemption, set to something cinematic and overwhelming. That gives the audience the highlight reel version of the suffering and moves quickly toward the payoff, because the payoff is what people came for. This is not that version. Because the years between mattered, not as context, not as backstory, as the actual substance of what Tiger Woods was going through, quietly, mostly privately, in the specific and unglamorous reality of a man trying to rebuild something that may not have been rebuildable. The rehabilitation was not linear. Nothing about this period was linear. There were returns that raised expectations and then collapsed under the weight of them. There were tournaments where he moved through the field for 2 rounds and looked briefly, dangerously like himself, and then the body would communicate in the blunt and non-negotiable language that bodies use, that it was not ready, that he was not ready. The public watched each return with the complicated attention of people who no longer knew what they were hoping for. In 2015, he withdrew from the Farmers Insurance Open after 2 rounds. his swing. The thing that had been the most reliable instrument in professional sports for 15 years was producing numbers that didn't belong to him. Shot shapes that were unfamiliar. A short game that had always been automatic, generating moments of genuine uncertainty. The word people stopped saying out loud, but kept thinking was finished. In May 2017, he was found asleep at the wheel of his car on a Florida roadside. Not alcohol. The toxicology report confirmed that. Prescription medication. A combination of drugs being used to manage the pain that had become the permanent background condition of his existence. He was photographed in the police station. The mugshots circulated everywhere. This was not a man in the middle of a comeback story. This was a man trying to locate the bottom so he could stop falling. The spinal fusion surgery in April 2017 was the 5th operation on his back. His team spoke about it carefully, the way people speak about things when they are not certain the news on the other side will be good. When asked about his future in golf, Tiger himself began using language he had never used before. Uncertain language, honest language, the language of a man who no longer knew the outcome in advance. He began to recover, slowly, in the way that recovery actually happens rather than the way it is portrayed. Not a montage, not a moment, not a single morning where everything clicked back into place. Incremental, frustrating, frequently interrupted. He returned to competition in late 2017 at the Hero World Challenge. He finished 9th. It was, by the standards of what had preceded it, almost nothing. It was also everything. This wasn't a comeback story yet. This was survival. Here's the 2019 Masters Climax section. April 14, 2019, Augusta National Golf Club, Augusta, Georgia. The final round of the Masters tournament. Tiger Woods wakes up that morning 3 shots off the lead, which means, in the language of golf, that he is close enough to win and far enough back that nobody has to confront that possibility yet. The comfortable position for everyone, the broadcasters, the other competitors, the millions of people watching, is to acknowledge that he is in contention without fully committing to what contention actually means. Because committing to what it means requires believing something that the previous decade had made extremely difficult to believe. He makes the turn at even par, quietly, without drama. The leaderboard shifting around him, the way leaderboards do on Sunday afternoons at Augusta, when the pressure begins separating the competitors from the people who thought they were competitors. And then the back 9 happens. A birdie on 10, another on 11. The crowd, which had been following him with the particular energy of people watching something they cannot yet name, begins to understand that the thing they cannot name is real, that it is actually happening. That the man walking these fairways is not a nostalgic version of Tiger Woods or a diminished version or a sentimental favorite being carried by goodwill and crowd noise. He is Tiger Woods. The roars begin traveling. Augusta National is a property of hills and trees, and elevation changes that carry sound in ways that other courses don't. When something happens on one part of the course, the roar moves through the property like a wave, and everyone hears it before they know what caused it, and the not knowing is its own specific kind of electricity. On this Sunday, the roars don't stop. He stands on the 18th fairway with a lead, with a number that if it holds will mean something that the English language does not have adequate architecture to contain. 11 years. 5 back surgeries, a mugshot, an apology podium, a roadside in Florida at 2 in the morning, and a lead at Augusta on a Sunday in April. He hits the fairway, he hits the green, he too putts. And it is over. Tiger Woods, 2019 Masters champion, his 15th major, his first in 11 years. He embraces his son Charlie at the edge of the 18th green. His daughter Sam wraps around him from the other side. His mother Kultita, the woman whose discipline lives somewhere inside every shot he has ever hit, holds him and does not let go. Years after the world had moved on, he came back. There is a temptation at the end of a story like this to wrap it cleanly, to deliver a lesson, to extract a moral from the wreckage and the recovery, and present it to the audience in a form that makes the suffering feel purposeful, and the comeback feel inevitable, and the whole arc feel like it was always moving towards something rather than simply, chaotically, painfully, without guarantee, moving. But Tiger Woods is not a fable. He is a man who was handed an extraordinary gift and built it into something the sporting world had never seen, and then made choices that dismantled everything around it, who lost his marriage and his reputation and his body, and spent years in a darkness that he has described, in his own words, as the period when he genuinely did not know who he was outside of golf. And then, without the clean narrative arc that stories are supposed to have, he came back anyway. Not because the story required it, not because the mythology demanded it, because somewhere underneath the scandal and the surgeries and the silence, the thing that had always been most true about Tiger Woods was still there, intact, waiting. The 2019 Masters did not erase what came before it. The affairs still happened. The marriages still ended. The years still passed. History does not have an undue function, and greatness, real greatness, does not come with one either. But on that Sunday in Augusta, something was proven that the previous decade had made feel unprovable. Tiger Woods didn't just win again. He proved that even after losing everything, greatness can return.
If I can show the world that you can come back from it.
Hits with the force of a thunderstorm.
What a punch! The right uppercut!
And takes a punch like no other.
Tyson Fury. That guy's a beast. He's 6'9", and he weighs 250.
I have two very different lives. I have Tyson Fury, who I was born, and then I have the Gypsy King. I couldn't tell them apart.
We are Spartans!
The reigning, undefeated WBC heavyweight champion of the world, the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury.
A man is lying on the canvas, not sitting, not kneeling, not stumbling backward into the ropes in the way that fighters sometimes do when they are hurt but still present, still functional, still somewhere inside the fight. Lying, flat, arms out, eyes open but seeing nothing that exists in that arena. 40,000 people are on their feet, not cheering, not booing, just screaming. That specific, primal, wordless sound a crowd makes when something happens that the human brain processes before language can catch up with it. The referee is counting. 1, 2, 3. The cameras find his corner, his trainer, a man who has seen everything this sport has to offer across 30 years of standing in corners. And even he looks like he's watching something he doesn't have a category for. 4, 5. The man on the canvas blinks. Here is what you need to understand about this moment. Not the boxing, not the punch that put him there, or the record of the man who threw it, or the pay-per-view numbers, or any of the other machinery that surrounds a fight of this magnitude. What you need to understand is what this man had already survived before he ever climbed through those ropes. He had survived a childhood that the word difficult does not begin to cover. Born 3 months too early, 1 pound. A father who named him after the most ferocious heavyweight who ever lived, not as inspiration, but as prophecy, as a dare thrown at the universe. He had survived years of being too much, too big, too loud, too strange, too everything for a world that prefers its athletes containable. He had survived addiction, the kind that doesn't announce itself dramatically, but arrives quietly, daily, in the forms of substances and behaviors that numb the specific pain that no championship belt and no crowd and no amount of money has ever been able to touch. He had survived depression so complete, so total, so physically heavy that he could not get out of bed for months, could not train, could not answer his phone, could not locate inside himself a single reason that felt sufficient. He had survived the night he got into his car, his Ferrari, going 190 miles per hour, aimed at a bridge. Something stopped him. He has never been able to fully explain what. 6, 7, and now here he is, Las Vegas, the whole world watching. Deontay Wilder, the most dangerous one-punch knockout artist the heavyweight division has seen in a generation, standing over him with his arms raised. The script is already written. The ending is already known. Nobody survives that punch. Nobody gets up from that count. Nobody comes back from everything this man has already come back from and then finds something left one more time, in the worst possible moment, on the biggest possible stage. Nobody. And then he got up. What kind of man is that? What is built inside a human being that allows them to do that? And what does it cost? This is not a boxing story. There is a specific kind of fighter that the boxing world doesn't know how to handle, not the ones who are simply big. The heavyweight division has always had big men, not the ones who are simply fast. Speed at heavyweight is not unprecedented, not even the ones who hit hard, because hard-hitting heavyweights are practically the definition of the division. No, the ones the sport genuinely struggles with are the ones who combine things that are not supposed to coexist in the same body. 6 feet 9 inches tall, 250 pounds, and moving, genuinely, impossibly moving, like a middleweight. Feet that shouldn't be that light, belonging to a frame that shouldn't be that nimble. A jab that arrived from an angle that opponents spent entire training camps preparing for, and still couldn't solve when the bell rang. Tyson Fury was not a heavyweight in the traditional sense. He was a problem that the traditional sense had no answer for. His professional career began in 2008, and from the beginning, the results were unambiguous. Opponent after opponent, some credible, some less so, found the same thing waiting for them inside that ring. Not a brawler, not a slugger, not the kind of fighter his size and his background and his personality suggested he might be. A technician, a frustrating, suffocating, endlessly inventive technician who fought on his own terms so completely that opponents often spent 12 rounds chasing a version of the fight that Fury had no intention of giving them. But what was happening outside the ring during this period was, in its own way, just as significant as anything happening inside it. Because Tyson Fury had a mouth, not in the ordinary sense. Every fighter talks. Trash talk is practically a job requirement at the professional level, but Fury's public persona operated on a different frequency entirely. He said things that made promoters wince, and broadcasters reach for the delay button, and boxing writers stare at their notepads wondering how to quote him accurately without losing their jobs. He was outrageous, deliberately, gleefully, constitutionally outrageous. And here is the thing that took people a long time to understand about that. The thing that gets lost in the retrospective discomfort about some of what he said. He wasn't performing. There was no media trainer behind the curtain pulling strings. No calculated strategy to generate headlines and build a pay-per-view audience. Tyson Fury said what he thought, when he thought it, with a complete absence of internal filter that most human beings spend their entire lives carefully constructing. For some people, that was electrifying, authentic in a sport full of managed personas and corporate-approved sound bites. For others, it was something much harder to defend. Both reactions were correct, simultaneously, without resolution. But through all of it, through every controversial interview and every eyebrow-raising quote and every moment that made the boxing establishment deeply, visibly uncomfortable, the wins kept coming, the resume kept building, and the collision course with the man who had dominated heavyweight boxing for over a decade kept drawing closer. Vladimir Klitschko, 11 years, unified champion, the most technically disciplined heavyweight of his generation, the immovable object, and Fury was coming. But what happened in the months after that victory, after the night Fury did what nobody believed he could do, would shock everyone who thought they finally understood him. November 28, 2015, Dusseldorf, Germany, Esprit Arena, 60,000 people, and walking toward that ring, in a suit, not a robe, an actual tailored suit, is a 6'9" man singing. Not shadow boxing, not staring down the camera with manufactured intensity, not performing the ritual of controlled aggression that every fighter, at every level, has performed on the walk to the ring since the sport began. Singing, Mr. Boombastic, full voice, completely committed, not a trace of irony. The crowd doesn't know what to do with this. The broadcasters don't know what to do with this. Klitschko, watching from across the ring with the stillness of a man who has reduced every heavyweight challenger for 11 years to a predictable, manageable problem. Even he doesn't know what to do with this, which, it would turn out, was exactly the point. Because Tyson Fury had studied Vladimir Klitschko the way a scientist studies a system. Not just the punches, the psychology, the method, the way Klitschko controlled distance and tempo and emotional atmosphere inside a fight to make opponents feel like they were always slightly behind. Always slightly off balance, always fighting on ground that shifted just enough to make clean offense impossible. Fury's answer to that system was not a counter system. It was chaos. Controlled, deliberate, brilliantly executed chaos. 12 rounds. And for 12 rounds, Fury did something no heavyweight in over a decade had managed to do. He made Klitschko look ordinary, made the jab that had neutralized every serious challenger look slow, made the championship poise that had defined an era looked like rigidity, like a man trying to apply a solution to a problem his preparation had never anticipated. Fury circled, switched stances, tied up when Klitschko found range, landed the jab from angles that required a 6'9" frame to even be possible, talked constantly, quietly, directly into Klitschko's ear throughout the entire fight. Not trash talk. Something more unsettling than trash talk. Conversation. The final bell. Unanimous decision. New heavyweight champion of the world. And then Tyson Fury lay down. Not because he was hurt, not because he was exhausted, but because the weight of what had just happened, the sheer, accumulated, impossible weight of it, required a moment of complete surrender to gravity. He lay on his back in the center of the ring, arms out, eyes open, staring at the arena ceiling, the same position he would find himself in 3 years later, under very different circumstances. In that moment, flat on the canvas by choice, he looked like the happiest human being alive, like a man who had finally arrived somewhere he had been traveling toward his entire life. He had the belts, he had the moment, he had conquered the unconquerable, he had everything, and within 18 months, it would all be gone. Not taken by an opponent, not lost in a controversial decision, not stripped by politics or injury, or the ordinary cruelties of professional sport. Gone because of something living inside Tyson Fury that the championship had not fixed, had never been able to fix, had never even come close. This is the section most people skip. Not literally. They don't click away. They just process it differently, hold it at arm's length, file it under the category of things that are sad, but not central. Background noise to the main event of the highlight packages, and the knockout compilations, and the championship photographs. We are not doing that, because this section is not background. This section is the entire story. It starts quietly. That is the thing nobody tells you about depression at this level. It does not arrive with drama. It does not announce itself with a single catastrophic moment that explains everything that follows. It seeps, it accumulates, it replaces things, slowly, incrementally, almost imperceptibly, until one day you look around at your life and the person you were supposed to be is nowhere in the room. Fury stopped training, not because of injury, not because of a contractual dispute or a promotional problem, or any of the external machinery that disrupts fighters' careers in ordinary ways. He just stopped. The weight came on, not the comfortable weight of a man enjoying his success, the weight of someone using food the way he would later use alcohol and cocaine. As insulation, as distance, as a way of making the body large enough that the thing living inside it might feel for a few hours slightly less overwhelming. He reached nearly 400 pounds, a man who had been one of the most physically extraordinary heavyweights on the planet, carrying 400 pounds on a frame that had been built for movement, for speed, for the specific athletic expression that had just defeated the best heavyweight alive. The licensing boards noticed. The belts were stripped. The mandatory defenses went unmet. The promotional machinery that had been building toward the biggest fights in heavyweight boxing. Fury versus Joshua, Fury versus Wilder. The matchups the entire division had been circling, ground to a halt, and Fury disappeared. What happened inside that disappearance is not something that can be reconstructed from the outside with complete accuracy. What we have are the things Fury himself has said, in interviews, in documentaries, in the kind of unguarded public moments that his constitutional inability to perform a filtered version of himself occasionally produces. He drank every day. The kind of drinking that stops being social or celebratory or even escapist and becomes simply structural, a load-bearing wall inside a life that has stopped making sense without it. He used cocaine, which he has spoken about with a specificity and an absence of self-pity that is, in its own way, more disturbing than dramatic confession would be. He wasn't performing shame. He was just reporting facts about a person he remembered being. He stopped answering his phone. And then there was the car, his Ferrari. A road outside his home, a bridge in the distance, 190 miles per hour. He has described this moment publicly, described the specific, terrible clarity of a mind that has arrived at a conclusion and is in the process of acting on it. The speed, the bridge getting closer, the decision that had been made somewhere below the level of conscious thought. Something stopped him. He has never been able to say precisely what. A thought, a voice, an instinct that fired from somewhere so deep inside him that it bypassed everything the depression had dismantled and reached the part of Tyson Fury that was not, would not be, finished. He slowed down. He turned around. He went home. Sit with that. Not the boxing, not the belts, not the record or the highlights or the mythology of the Gypsy King. Just a man on a road. going very fast towards something he couldn't come back from, and choosing, in a way he still can't fully explain, not to. 3 years. That is how long the boxing world waited. How long the heavyweight division reorganized itself around his absence. How long the people who loved him watched from a distance and hoped and prayed and tried not to calculate the odds. 3 years. And when Fury finally came back, when he finally walked into a gym and started the slow, painful, humbling process of rebuilding a body and a mind and a career from the wreckage, the person who returned was not the same man who left. He was something harder, something that had been tested in a way that no opponent, no championship fight, no amount of pressure inside a boxing ring had ever tested him. Something that had looked at the worst possible version of its own future and decided, quietly, without drama, without an audience, to build a different one. This is where the story should end. This is where, for most people, it would end. But Tyson Fury is not most people, and what he did next defied every law of sport, biology, and human psychology that anyone thought they understood. He started with running, not sparring, not the combinations on the heavy bag, not the tactical sessions, and the tactical film study and the sophisticated preparation of a world championship training camp. Running, 1 mile, then 2, then slowly, painfully, with a body that had to be reintroduced to the idea of being asked things of it, further. There is nothing cinematic about this part of the story. No montage music, no slow motion shots of a champion rediscovering himself. Just a very large man, in the rain, in the early morning, doing the most basic thing a fighter can do, and finding it hard. Finding it hard and doing it anyway. The weight came off. Slowly at first. Then, with the momentum that physical transformation builds when the mind has finally committed to it completely, the movement returned. That specific, improbable, endlessly frustrating for opponents' movement that had dismantled Klitschko and baffled every heavyweight who had shared a ring with him. It came back. Not immediately. Not all at once, but it came back. And something else came back with it. Something harder to measure than weight or footwork or punch output. A quality that his coaches noticed first and struggled to articulate. A presence inside the gym that was different from the presence that had been there before the fall. Calmer, more certain. Like a man who no longer needed to convince anyone of anything because he had already survived the only argument that mattered. The comeback fights came and went. Credible opponents. Handled professionally, the machine slowly returning to operating temperature. And then, Deontay Wilder, December 2018. Staples Center, Los Angeles. The hardest puncher in heavyweight boxing. A right hand that had finished every single professional opponent it had ever landed cleanly on. A fighter whose entire psychological infrastructure was built on the knowledge, the absolute, empirically supported knowledge, that he could end any fight with a single punch. Any fight, any opponent. For 11 rounds, Fury boxed beautifully, moved, frustrated, made Wilder look, at moments, like a fighter without an answer. And then the 12th round happened. The right hand landed, the canvas, the arms out, the eyes open and seeing nothing, the referee counting. We have been here before, at the very beginning of this story. The image that opened everything. The man flat on his back with the world already writing his ending. Now you know what it cost to get to that canvas. The childhood, the championship, the addiction, the 400 pounds, the Ferrari on the road to the bridge, 3 years of silence, the slow, unglamorous, deeply human process of running 1 mile, and then 2, and then further. All of that. And it still wasn't enough to keep him off the canvas. 7. The count reaches 7. And Tyson Fury, who has no business being conscious, let alone vertical, let alone functional inside a championship boxing match, opens his eyes, finds the floor with his hands, finds his feet with something that has no clinical name and no training manual entry, and no equivalent in any other area of human experience. Gets up. The crowd noise is physical, a wall of sound that hits the body before the brain processes it. He doesn't just survive the round, he wins it. The rematch was inevitable. And what Fury did to Deontay Wilder when they met again didn't just end the rivalry. It announced to every heavyweight alive that something had fundamentally changed inside Tyson Fury, something that couldn't be trained for, something that couldn't be stopped. February 22nd, 2020, MGM Grand Garden Arena, Las Vegas, Wilder versus Fury 2. And from the first bell, From the literal first seconds of the first round, it is immediately, undeniably clear that something is different tonight. Not different in the way promoters use that word, not a new tactical wrinkle or a slightly adjusted stance. Different in the way a person is different when they have been somewhere completely dark and return from it carrying knowledge that no gym, no coach, and no amount of preparation can give you. Different in the way that only surviving something real can make you different. Fury walks Wilder down from round one, not recklessly, because reckless and Wilder in the same sentence ends one way, but with a pressure that is entirely new, a willingness to be in the pocket, to eat the small punches in exchange for landing the meaningful ones, to make Wilder feel, for the first time in his professional life, that the distance he needs to set up that right hand simply isn't available. Wilder's right hand lands clean in the early rounds. Fury walks through it. Not stumbles through, not survives and clinches and prays, walks through the punch that had finished every man it had ever landed on, including Fury himself 14 months earlier, and takes a step forward. The arena understands what it is watching before it can articulate it. 40,000 people shifting simultaneously. The script they arrived with no longer matching the fight in front of them. Round 3. A combination drops Wilder for the first time in his professional career. He beats the count. He continues. Because Wilder, whatever else is true about him, is not a man who quits. But the fight is already decided. Not by the knockdown, by everything that produced it. By the pressure and the accuracy and the quality inside Fury that made every adjustment Wilder's corner attempted feel like rearranging furniture in a burning building. Round 7. The referee waves it off. Tyson Fury, WBC heavyweight champion of the world. Again. And he sings. Of course he sings. Because the singing was never a gimmick, never a performance, never anything other than the purest possible expression of a man so completely, irreducibly himself, that even standing at the summit of his sport, he cannot produce a reaction that someone else has written for him. The crowd joins him, and for one moment, just one, the money and the politics and the years of darkness that preceded this night dissolve completely. Then came Wilder III, the fight nobody needed and everybody watched. Fury knocked down twice, still winning by knockout in the 11th, a fight that revealed more clearly than any victory ever could how thin the line is between the champion and the man on the canvas. Then came Usyk, 2 fights, 2 losses. Time, the one opponent nobody outsmarts, beginning its quiet, inevitable campaign. The belt had been won and lost and won again. But the real fight, the one that started long before any of this, was never about the belt. That fight was always going to be the one that mattered most. So what do we do with Tyson Fury? Not the fighter. The fighter is easy. The fighter is historic. The record speaks clearly, and the highlights speak clearly. And the night in Dusseldorf, and the night in Las Vegas, and the getting up from the canvas. All of it speaks clearly. The fighter we can handle. It's the man we struggle with. Because Tyson Fury has said things, publicly, repeatedly, without apparent awareness of the damage they caused. About women, about sexuality, about communities whose relationship with the world is already difficult enough without a heavyweight champion making it harder. That is true. It sits alongside everything else that is true about him. And it does not dissolve because the other things are extraordinary. And it does not define him completely because human beings are not built from single facts. And it cannot be filed away as irrelevant because the people it hurt are also real. It is simply true. And here is the other thing that is true. Millions of people, particularly men who have been taught that the specific darkness Fury described publicly is not something men are permitted to describe publicly, watched his story and felt something shift inside them. Not because he is perfect, not because his journey toward openness about mental health arrived without contradiction or hypocrisy, or the complicated mess that genuine human transformation always involves, but because he said it out loud. Depression, suicidal thoughts, the Ferrari on the road to the bridge, the crying, the not being able to get out of bed. He said all of it, on camera, without performance, without the careful, mediated, PR-approved language that public figures typically deploy when they approach these territories. He just said it. And for some people, the one sitting alone somewhere who needed to hear that this could happen to the toughest man they had ever watched, and that the toughest man they had ever watched had survived it. That mattered more than any belt. That saved something. The legacy of Tyson Fury is not a clean thing. It was never going to be a clean thing, because Tyson Fury himself is not a clean thing, and never pretended to be, which is perhaps the most honest quality he possesses and the one that makes him simultaneously the most compelling and most complicated figure the heavyweight division has produced in a generation. He was too much. From the beginning, too big, too loud, too strange, too honest, too broken, too resilient, too contradictory to fit inside any single narrative without something important getting left out. We started with a man on a canvas, 40,000 people screaming, the count at 7, the world already writing the ending it thought it knew. He got up, not because the sport required it, not because the money required it, not because the mythology of the Gypsy King required it, because somewhere inside Tyson Fury, underneath the addiction and the depression and the chaos and the crown and the singing and the damage and the grace, there was something that refused. We never found out exactly what that something is. We never found out where it lives, or what it costs, or whether it will always be there when it is needed. Neither did he. And maybe that is the only honest way this story ends. Not with an answer, with a man, still standing, still here, still, somehow, himself.
Tiger Woods has 81 tour wins, but that's not what makes him different. What makes him different is what he built when nobody was watching. And I'm not talking about his golf game. I'm talking about the actual physical things this man constructed, purchased, and designed specifically so the rest of the world could never touch him. By the end of this video, you're gonna look at Tiger Woods completely differently. Not as a golfer, not as a celebrity, but as someone who looked at the life everyone else was living and said, nah, I'll build my own. Let's get into it. The mansion. His house isn't a house. Most athletes buy big houses. Tiger bought an island. Well, technically, it's Jupiter Island. But when you hear what he did with it, island is the right word. He dropped around $40 million on 12 acres of land, then tore everything down and rebuilt from scratch. Not because he wanted it to look nice, because he wanted it to be impossible to get into. Real estate people literally call it paparazzi proof. Inside, an oxygen therapy room, a full medical recovery wing, a cold plunge, a 100-foot running track, a private movie room, a gym that would embarrass most professional sports franchises. Outside, a 4-hole practice area, 2 pools, a private beach, and a lagoon. But here's the part nobody talks about. There's a rumor floating around Jupiter Island for years. Locals say Tiger has a private submarine dock hidden along his lagoon wall. Nobody's confirmed it. No photos exist, but the people who live near him swear it's real. And honestly, after everything you're about to hear, would you even be surprised? This isn't a house, it's a fortress, built by a man who decided the world didn't deserve access to him unless he said so. But the house is just where he sleeps. What he built right next to it will make your jaw drop. The private training compound. His practice area is a science lab. Most golfers practice at a driving range. Tiger built his own country club, and he's the only member, separate from his mansion entirely. A private training compound that nobody gets into. No cameras, no coaches unless he invites them. Nothing. Inside, a full short game training center. Custom bunkers built with sand specifically chosen to mimic Augusta National. Multiple greens with different turf types. A fitting bay where he tests prototype clubs that haven't even been released yet. But here's the detail that gets me. When Tiger was rebuilding his swing, he had actual trees replanted on the property, not for decoration. To change the ball flight windows so his practice shots matched real tournament conditions, he moved trees. To practice better, Every inch of that compound is measured, shaped, and adjusted for one person's game. When something changes in his swing, he doesn't adapt to the facility. The facility adapts to him. That's not a practice area. That's a laboratory where the experiment is Tiger Woods himself. TGR golf course design. He doesn't just play courses, he builds them. Tiger got so obsessed with perfecting golf that at some point playing courses wasn't enough anymore, so he started building them. Through his company TGR Design, Tiger has become one of the most respected golf architects on the planet. Blue Jack National in Texas, Paynes Valley in Missouri, El Cardenal in Mexico. More courses being built around the world right now. Here's what separates his courses from everyone else's. He designs them like a competitor, not a businessman. Paynes Valley has a 19th hole, a bonus par 3 carved into the side of a cliff, just because Tiger thought the round shouldn't end on a boring note. El Cardenal became the first Tiger-designed course to host a PGA Tour event. Blue Jack National is now one of the most exclusive private clubs in the country. Insiders estimate Tiger earns somewhere between 8 and 9 figures every single year just from his design business alone. He turned his obsession with the perfect golf course into a machine that prints money while he sleeps. The car collection, his cars tell a story. Nobody expected. Tiger Woods is not a flashy car guy. He doesn't post photos next to Ferraris. He keeps everything private, but the cars he does own tell one of the most unbelievable stories in sports history. In his collection, a Porsche Carrera GT, a Lamborghini Murcielago, a Mercedes-Benz S65 AMG, custom Lexus vehicles, cars so rare that collectors say they're worth far more than what Tiger paid, but that's not what makes his collection famous. What makes it famous is 2 specific vehicles Tiger never intended to be famous at all. His Cadillac Escalade from the 2009 accident outside his driveway that changed everything, and his Genesis GV80 from the 2021 crash that nearly took his leg. Most athletes brag about their exotic cars. Tiger accidentally turned 2 regular SUVs into the most talked about vehicles in the history of professional sports, and somehow that feels very Tiger. Quiet about the impressive stuff, unintentionally iconic about everything else. The super yacht, his hotel has an engine. Picture this. It's the week of the US Open. Fans are everywhere. Media is camped outside every hotel. Everyone wants a piece of Tiger. And Tiger, he's on a 155-foot yacht parked near the water, completely unreachable. The yacht is called Privacy, and that name is not an accident. He paid around $20 million for it, spends another $2 million every year just keeping it running. It has 13 cabins, a full gym, a scuba center, jet skis, a bar, and a crew of 10 people who live on it full time. But Tiger didn't buy it because it looks good. He bought it because it moves. If the world gets too loud, Tiger can literally leave. Not just go inside, not just close the curtains. He can pull up the anchor and disappear into the ocean. One time, an actual billionaire offered him $25 million for it. $5 million more than he paid. Tiger said no immediately. Didn't even think about it because you can't put a price on disappearing whenever you want. The private jet. His car is a plane. You and I drive to the doctor. Tiger flies, private, in his own jet, for a single appointment. The jet is a Gulfstream G550, one of the fastest long-range business jets ever built. 7,700 miles without stopping, a private bedroom, a full shower, leather seating for 18 people. So quiet that pilots say you can whisper from one end to the other. Early in his career, Tiger flew commercial like everyone else. Then then he had kids, then came the injuries, then came the chaos of being the most recognized athlete on earth. And he made a decision. Never again. He used the jet to fly cross country for single doctor appointments, last minute trips to Vegas. When his kids were young, he reportedly used it just to pick them up from school events in other states. Not to show off, not for the photos, just because to Tiger, his time is the most valuable thing he owns. And waiting in airports is time he's not getting back. This isn't luxury. This is a man who calculated the cost of wasting his own life in a terminal and said, no thanks. The diving obsession, the thing that relaxes him, will actually surprise you. When you think of Tiger Woods unwinding, what do you picture? Not this. Tiger's idea of peace is strapping on a rebreather, dropping 40 feet underwater and spearfishing alone while sharks swim nearby. He owns professional grade rebreathers, underwater scooters, specialized free dive cameras, high-end spear rigs that actual professional divers use. He trains his breath hold the same way he trains his swing, deliberately, obsessively, until it's perfect. And according to one of his closest friends, Tiger looks calmer underwater than he does anywhere on land. Let that sink in. The most intense competitor in golf history. The man who came back from a car crash that doctors said might end his ability to walk. His happy place is complete silence at the bottom of the ocean. No crowd, no cameras, just dark water and the sound of his own heartbeat. That detail tells you more about Tiger Woods than any trophy ever could. The underground war room, he built a bunker just for his swing, under his mansion, underground. Tiger Woods built a secret laboratory, and it has exactly one purpose: making his golf swing perfect. This isn't a simulator. This isn't some fancy screen in a basement. Insiders call it the war room, a bunker-style facility built like a military training chamber, designed for one single person. Inside, a full 3D motion capture arena tracking every millimeter of his movement. Sensors built into the floor reading his pressure, weight shift, and knee torque. A proprietary AI system trained specifically on Tiger's swing, and a climate control system that can replicate the exact temperature, humidity, and lighting of Augusta National, Pebble Beach, St. Andrews, any course he's preparing for. The walls are concrete, soundproofed, no windows, no natural light. It is a bunker, built for one man, to do one thing. And according to the few people who actually know Tiger personally, when something is wrong with his game, he doesn't call a coach. He doesn't go to the range. He goes underground, alone, no cameras, no distractions, just Tiger and a room full of technology waiting to tell him what's broken and how to fix it. This man had enough money to do anything, go anywhere, buy anything, and what he chose to build in secret underneath his own home was a chamber designed for one single motion, a golf swing. That's not talent, that's not money, that's a different category of human being entirely. So here's the thing about Tiger Woods. Everyone talks about the wins, the comeback, the fist pumps on 18. But now you've seen what's underneath all of that. A fortress so the world can't reach him. A secret lab where he engineers his own swing. Courses he designed because playing wasn't enough. Cars that became iconic for all the wrong reasons. A yacht so he can vanish when it gets too loud. A jet so his time never gets wasted. An ocean he disappears into to feel human again. And a bunker where he goes to become unstoppable. Tiger doesn't buy things to show off. He builds things to stay in control of his privacy, of his time, of his craft. of everything, and maybe that's the real reason he's the greatest of all time. Not because he's more talented, not because he got lucky, because when everyone else went home, Tiger went underground and kept working. If you could have one thing from this list, which one are you taking? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.
26 have tried, 26 have failed to solve Khabib Nurmagomedov in a mixed martial arts setting. In modern day MMA, it's an absolutely incredible accomplishment. And tonight, with status as the most dominant force in the game, Khabib Nurmagomedov is chasing the biggest win of his career.
How can you deny this man?
This is true. This is not trash talking. Hey guys, Irish only 6 million, Russian 150 million. I wanna fight Wagyu chicken.
It's his best chance for not getting kicked.
Oh, beautiful trip. Oh, serious right. No one on earth who does grounding.
I don't think about this guy. He have to come back, he have to defend his belt. I feel my time is coming.
Feared is something special. People are scared of this guy now.
Lightweight champion of the world, Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov!
He didn't lose. He didn't get knocked out. He didn't get finished. He won. But what happened next shocked the whole world. Inside the cage, Khabib Nurmagomedov had just done what he always did. He controlled the fight. He broke his opponent's rhythm. He finished strong. Another win. Another perfect record. Now 29 wins, no losses, no doubt. The crowd was loud. The belt was his. The moment was supposed to be celebration, but something felt different. Khabib wasn't smiling like before. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't running around the cage. Instead, he stood still, like the fight had taken something out of him the win could not give back. Then he spoke, and everything changed. He talked about his father, the man who trained him, the man who built him, the man who was no longer there. His voice cracked, his eyes dropped, and in that moment, the strongest fighter in the world didn't look like a champion anymore. He looked like a son. And then came the words nobody was ready for. I cannot continue without my father. Silence hit the arena. Confusion, shock, disbelief. Fans looked at each other, trying to understand what they just heard. A fighter at the absolute top, talking about leaving. He had everything. Fame, money, undefeated legacy, the world at his feet, but he was walking away. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. And in that moment, the story stopped being about winning fights. It became about something far deeper, because the greatest shock wasn't that he won, it was that after reaching the very top, he decided not to stay there. In fighting, there is an unspoken rule. If you are at the top, you don't leave. You stay. You defend. You keep going until the body breaks or the money runs out. That's how it usually ends. Most champions don't walk away when everything is perfect. They stay for one more fight, then another, and slowly the sharp edge starts to fade. The crowd notices first, then the critics, then the fighter himself. But by then, it's often too late. In the world of MMA, legends are rarely remembered for when they were great. They are remembered for how long they stayed after greatness started slipping away. That's why what Khabib Nurmagomedov did felt impossible, because he wasn't declining. He wasn't losing speed. He wasn't being forced out. He was still perfect, still undefeated, still dominant, still the most feared grappler in the sport. And yet, he left. That goes against everything the fight game teaches. Fighters are taught to push one more time, to take one more payday, to chase one more highlight, to hold the belt as long as possible. Because in this world, greatness is measured by how long you can survive at the top. But Khabib broke that rule. He didn't wait for the fall. He didn't wait for the damage. He didn't wait for the regret. He stepped away while the world was still calling him unstoppable. And that's what made it so hard to understand, because no one leaves when they are still winning everything. No one walks away when they are still the problem nobody can solve. But he did, and that raised one question in every fan's mind. Why would someone give up a throne they could sit on forever? From the very beginning, Khabib Nurmagomedov didn't fight like everyone else. He didn't just train to win, he trained to make losing impossible. Every day started the same way. Early mornings, hard drills, endless wrestling rounds, no shortcuts, no easy days, just pressure over and over again. In his world, tired was normal. Pain was normal. Quitting was not. He wasn't built for highlight reels or quick knockouts. He was built for control, for breaking rhythm, for making strong fighters feel slow, confused, and stuck. Once he got hold of an opponent, something changed. It wasn't just strength, it was timing, weight, position, pressure that never stopped. Round after round, he stayed on top, not rushing, not wasting energy, just slowly taking everything away. At first, opponents tried to fight back. Then they tried to survive. Then they stopped trying at all. That's what made him different. Most fighters win with moments. A punch, a kick, a flash. Khabib won with time, with pressure that never ended, with a style that didn't allow recovery. And because of that, something strange happened in every fight. The longer it went, the more hopeless it became for the other man. No matter how skilled they were, no matter how confident they entered the cage, they always ended up in the same position. Stuck, tired, and waiting for it to end. There was no mystery anymore. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone trained for it. Everyone prepared for it. But still, nobody could stop it. Because he wasn't just trained to fight. He was built for a system where mistakes didn't exist. A system where pressure never stopped. A system where losing wasn't part of the design. And fight after fight, it worked exactly the same way. Perfect, relentless, unbroken. Being undefeated sounds like power, but for Khabib Nurmagomedov, it slowly became something heavier. At first, 29-0 looked perfect. Clean, untouched, a record every fighter dreams of. No losses, no doubts, no scars on paper. But perfection has a hidden cost, because once you reach the top and stay there, something changes. Every fight stops being just a fight. It becomes a risk to everything you've already built. One mistake, one slip, one moment of carelessness, and the whole story changes. That pressure never leaves. Every camp starts with the same thought. Don't be the one who breaks the streak. Every walk to the cage carries it. Every round adds more weight. Not just from the opponent, but from expectation. Fans don't just want you to win. They expect you to stay perfect. And that expectation grows louder after every victory. At 10-0, you are dangerous. At 20-0, you are respected. At 29-0, you are something else, a target. Because now, everyone isn't just trying to beat you. They are trying to be the one who ended it. That changes everything. Even in fights he controlled completely, the record was always there in the background. Not as pride, but as pressure. And pressure builds quietly. It doesn't scream. It doesn't show itself early. It sits in the back of every decision. Every exchange, every second on the feet. For most fighters, it eventually cracks them. But for Khabib, something different happened. He didn't break under it. He carried it, round after round, fight after fight, year after year. But carrying something that heavy for too long comes at a cost, because perfection doesn't just make you untouchable, it makes every next fight feel like the most dangerous one of your life. And at some point, even being undefeated starts to feel less like freedom and more like pressure you can never put down. Everything changed the day the man behind the system was gone. For Khabib Nurmagomedov, fighting was never just about opponents. It was about guidance, structure, direction, and that all came from one person, his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. He wasn't just a coach, he was the foundation. From childhood, he built Khabib step by step. Every drill had a purpose, every lesson had meaning. There was no confusion, no guessing, no freedom to drift, only discipline. And it worked. Khabib became the perfect result of that system. Calm, controlled, and unstoppable. But behind every performance was something deeper, a connection that went beyond sport. Then, suddenly, it ended. His father passed away. And in that moment, the structure that held everything together disappeared. The gym was still there, the training was still there, the fights were still there, but the voice that made it all make sense was gone. That kind of loss doesn't just hurt, it changes direction. Because when you've spent your entire life following one guide, one leader, one voice, losing it doesn't just create sadness, it creates silence where instructions used to be, and silence is heavy. After that, even victories felt different. The cage was still the same, but the meaning wasn't. The purpose wasn't as clear anymore, the path wasn't as simple. Before, every fight was part of a plan. Now, it was something else. Something harder to explain. Something harder to continue. This wasn't just about grief. It was about identity. Because when the person who shaped your entire life is gone, you don't just lose a coach. You lose the reason you were built the way you are. And for Khabib, that loss didn't weaken him. It changed what fighting meant forever. After the loss, nothing felt the same. Not the training, not the wins, not even the belt. For Khabib Nurmagomedov, everything had been built around one voice, his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov. But now that voice was gone, and what remained was something heavier than pain, a promise. Before his final fight, Khabib had spoken to his mother, and what she asked him wasn't about titles or legacy. It was about life, about loss, about not losing another son the way she had already lost her husband. She told him she didn't want him to continue fighting without his father, and Khabib listened. That moment became something he could never ignore, because in his world, promises aren't suggestions, they are final. So even while the world still saw an undefeated champion, inside him something was already decided. The cage would not be forever, the record would not be the priority. Something else had taken its place. Family, faith, respect. It wasn't an emotional decision made in one night. It was a weight that grew with every training session after his father's passing. Every punch felt different. Every camp felt incomplete. The system was still there, but the soul behind it was gone. And slowly, the question stopped being, how long can I stay champion? It became, why am I still here? That is what made the promise so powerful, because it didn't come from pressure, it came from clarity. He was no longer fighting to prove anything to the world. He was no longer chasing records or silence or perfection. He was honoring something bigger than all of it. And once that promise was made, the path forward was already changing. Not toward another fight, but toward an ending the world never saw coming. The final time Khabib Nurmagomedov walked into the cage, it didn't feel like a normal fight. It felt like the end of something bigger. Across from him stood Justin Gaethje, a dangerous striker known for violence and pressure. On paper, it was a title defense, another test, another night to stay undefeated. But for Khabib, nothing about this was normal anymore. His anchor was gone. His father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, was no longer there in the corner. The voice that guided every step of his career was missing. The system that shaped him had ended, and still, He fought. From the opening bell, something felt different. Not in his skill. That was still perfect. Not in his pressure. That was still unstoppable. But in his eyes, there was something deeper there now. Something quieter. Gaethia came forward with power, trying to break rhythm, trying to force chaos. But Khabib didn't rush. He didn't panic. He didn't chase. He waited like he always did. Then he closed the distance. Slowly, calmly, inevitably. Once the fight hit the ground, the familiar pattern returned. Control, pressure, no escape. But this time, it felt heavier. Every position wasn't just about dominance. It felt like it carried memory, emotion, and loss. Gaethje fought hard. He tried to resist. He tried to stand. But the weight was too much. Round after round, the fight slipped further away. And yet, Khabib never changed expression. No celebration, no anger, no noise, just focus. Because this fight wasn't just about winning another title defense, it was about finishing something unfinished inside himself. When the submission came, it didn't feel like victory in the usual sense, it felt like closure. And in that moment, standing alone in the cage without the man who built him, Khabib had completed the last fight of his life, not as a champion chasing more, but as a son honoring everything that came before. The moment the fight ended, the arena exploded. Another win, another defense, another night where Khabib Nurmagomedov did what no one else could do: stay perfect. But inside the cage, there was no celebration, no jumping, no shouting, no running to the fence, just silence. He stood there for a second, breathing heavy, looking down at the ground like something inside him had finally settled. The belt was placed on him, but it didn't feel like the same kind of victory anymore, because this time something was missing. His father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, wasn't there in the corner. The man who had been part of every fight, every step, every decision was gone, and with that absence, everything felt different. The crowd was loud, but Khabib wasn't listening. Then he began to speak. His voice was calm at first, controlled, but underneath it, you could feel something breaking loose. He talked about his father, about the promise, about the journey that brought him here, and then the words came that nobody expected. I promised my mother this will be my last fight. For a moment, the entire arena froze. Confusion, shock, disbelief. A champion at 29-0, still at the top, still untouchable, still improving, and yet saying goodbye. It didn't make sense to the crowd. It didn't make sense to the sport. Fighters don't leave like this. Not here, not now, not when everything is still perfect. But for Khabib, it already made sense long before he said it out loud. This wasn't a decision made in that moment. It was something that had been building quietly for a long time, through loss, through pressure, through silence. And now, standing in the center of the cage, holding the belt, he made the choice that changed everything. He didn't just win the fight, he ended his story while still at the top and walked away before the world could take anything else from him. After that night, everyone waited for the return. They thought it was temporary. They thought he would miss it. They thought he would come back for one more fight. But Khabib Nurmagomedov never did, because for him, the decision was already complete. Most fighters leave the door slightly open. They say things like maybe later or we'll see, but Khabib closed it fully. No confusion, no hesitation, no back and forth, and that's what made it so hard for people to understand. He was still at the top, still undefeated, still improving, still the most dominant force in the sport. There was no decline to explain it, no loss to justify it, nothing forced him out. So why leave? The answer was never about fighting ability, it was about meaning. After the death of his father, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, something inside him shifted permanently. Fighting was no longer just competition, it became memory, it became weight, it became something tied to emotion instead of ambition. And then came the promise to his mother. That promise became stronger than any title, stronger than any record, stronger than the entire idea of being champion. Because once that promise was made, everything else became secondary. Money didn't matter anymore, legacy didn't matter anymore, even perfection didn't matter anymore. He had already reached the highest point possible in his sport. There was nothing left to chase that could replace what he had lost. And that's the part people struggle to accept. Not that he could have stayed, but that he didn't need to. Because most fighters keep going to find meaning. Khabib left because he already found it. So while the world kept asking when he would return, the answer was simple and final. He wasn't gone because he was forced out. He was gone because for the first time in his life, he had nothing left to prove inside the cage. What Khabib did is rare in fighting history.